Hey there! Did you know that someone sold a fake Elvis Presley airplane for over $4 million? That's right. A complete lie that tricked Elvis fans, museums, and experts for years. Today I'm showing you how the FBI cracked this massive scam. You won't believe how these con artists fooled everyone with a regular old plane they dressed up to look like it belonged to the king of rock and roll. Stick around, what the FBI found will blow your mind. This is the inside story of how regular detectives brought down the biggest Elvis fake ever sold. Back in summer 2022, everyone who loved Elvis memorabilia was super excited. A private airplane called the New Lisa Marie showed up for sale. The sellers claimed it was one of Elvis Presley's personal jets that had been hidden away in a private airplane garage for decades. According to them, only Elvis's closest friends knew about it. The plane had Elvis's famous TCB, taking care of business, lightning bolt logo painted on it. Inside it had gold-plated bathroom fixtures, a bedroom they said Elvis himself used, and even personal items supposedly untouched since Elvis last flew in it. The airplane sold for a huge $4.2 million at a big auction, breaking records for Elvis collectibles. The buyer, who stayed anonymous, bought it for a group of Elvis fans who wanted to make it the main attraction at a new Elvis museum in Memphis. But here's where things get interesting. 6 months later, someone called the FBI with a tip. This person, who we later found out worked for the company that fixed up the airplane, said the whole story about the jet belonging to Elvis was made up. According to this whistleblower, Elvis never owned this airplane at all. It was just a regular commercial airplane that had been carefully changed to look like Elvis's personal jet. If this was true, it wasn't just a mistake. It was a planned, calculated scam worth millions of dollars. FBI Special Agent Marissa Teller got the case. She had worked for the FBI for 15 years and specialized in art crimes and fake collectibles. Even with all her experience, this case immediately stood out to her. When we got that tip, I thought, if this is true, it's one of the most elaborate scams I've ever seen, Teller later said in court. Her team started by looking at all the paperwork that supposedly proved the jet belonged to Elvis. They quickly found problems. The certificates saying the jet was authentic had signatures from people in Elvis's estate who had actually died years before they supposedly signed it. The flight records showing Elvis's trips on the airplane were very detailed, but when the FBI compared them with where Elvis actually was on those dates, things didn't match up. Most damning of all was the airplane's registration history, which the FBI got from the Federal Aviation Administration. These records showed that during the time the jet was supposedly owned by Elvis, it was actually registered to a commercial airline flying passengers between Chicago and Detroit. The FBI also discovered something the scammers had tried to hide: original serial numbers on certain airplane parts that proved it was manufactured in 1978, 2 years after Elvis's last known aircraft purchase, and only a year before his death. Engine maintenance logs showed the plane had been in continuous commercial service until 2015, making it impossible for it to have been Elvis's secret jet stored in a private hangar for decades. By early 2023, what started as one tip had grown into a full federal investigation called Operation Blue Suede Shoes. The FBI team identified a network of at least 7 people in 3 different countries connected to the fraud. The scheme was much more complex than they first thought. Digital evidence showed that the scammers had spent nearly 3 years carefully planning the scam. They created a fake digital paper trail that would pass standard checks. They bought an old commercial airplane for $425,000, then spent about $600,000 fixing it up to make it look like something Elvis would have owned in his time. The team even hired a voice actor who sounded like Elvis's pilot to record memories about flying the king on this jet. These recordings were played for potential buyers during private viewings of the aircraft. They included stories about Elvis's flight habits, his fear of turbulence, and even fake anecdotes about celebrities who had supposedly joined Elvis on the plane. Jonathan Reeves, a 58-year-old memorabilia dealer with a sketchy past, was the ringleader. Reeves had been investigated before for selling questionable sports memorabilia, though he was never charged. On the surface he seemed respected in collector circles, and had an impressive list of celebrity and wealthy clients. But the FBI investigation showed a different story. Reeves was the mastermind, who put together a team of specialists for different parts of the scam. There was Alexei Petrov, an expert at creating fake old documents with aged paper and inks that could fool regular tests. Maria Costello, an interior designer who had worked on movie sets and knew how to make interiors look authentic to specific time periods. And Thomas Wright, who used to work at Graceland and knew secrets about Elvis's personal tastes that most people didn't know. The scammers also created a fake backstory involving one of Elvis's less-known pilots, claiming this particular jet was purchased for Elvis's use when traveling with his entourage to smaller airports. They even manufactured a fake love story, claiming Elvis had the bedroom customized as a surprise for Priscilla during their marriage troubles in an attempt to rekindle their romance. A story that tugged at the heartstrings of Elvis fans and made questioning the jet's authenticity feel almost disrespectful to his memory. The money side of the scheme was just as complicated. The FBI's money experts traced a maze of transactions designed to hide who really owned the airplane and where the money went. The jet was officially sent to auction by a fake company registered in the Cayman Islands. The money from the sale was immediately wired to accounts in Switzerland, and then split up through a series of smaller transactions to accounts in 5 different countries. They weren't just selling a fake Elvis jet, explained FBI money expert Sarah Chen. They were running a complex money laundering operation to make the money impossible to track. But the most disturbing part of the fraud was how it took advantage of people's emotional connection to Elvis Presley. The victims weren't just rich collectors who could afford to lose millions. They included small museums, fan clubs, and everyday Elvis fans who had donated money to buy smaller items supposedly from the jet that had been sold separately before the main auction. The True Blue Elvis Fan Club of Tupelo, Mississippi, raised $35,000 from its 300 members to buy what they thought was a custom leather chair from Elvis's jet for their small museum. These people weren't just stealing money, Agent Teller later said. They were stealing pieces of history that meant something deeply personal to many Americans. The scammers created a sense of urgency around the auction by claiming that foreign buyers from Dubai and China were interested in the plane, stoking fears that this piece of American history might leave the country. This pressure tactic pushed American collectors to bid higher than they might have otherwise. By summer 2023, the FBI had enough evidence to move to the next phase. They needed to catch the scammers in the act to build a solid case. Their information suggested that Reeves and his team were already working on their next big scam, another fake celebrity item, this time supposedly owned by Marilyn Monroe. The FBI set up a clever sting operation. An undercover FBI agent pretended to be a rich collector from Dubai and contacted Reeves, saying he was interested in buying rare Hollywood memorabilia with flexible authentication requirements, which was code for being willing to buy items that might not be real. Over the next 3 months, the undercover agent built a relationship with Reeves, who gradually revealed more about his operation. In recorded conversations, Reeves bragged about the Elvis jet scam, calling it the perfect con, and explaining how they had created a fake history for the airplane that was better researched than most museum pieces. The FBI now had direct evidence that Reeves knew what he was doing, crucial for a successful prosecution. In September 2023, when Reeves arranged a meeting in Chicago to show the undercover agent papers for what he claimed was Marilyn Monroe's personal limousine, the FBI was ready. The sting operation ended with raids in Chicago, Los Angeles, and Miami, resulting in the arrest of all 7 members of the conspiracy. During these raids, agents discovered the scammers maintained an elaborate workshop in a Los Angeles warehouse where they aged materials, created replicas, and photographed fake items against period-appropriate backgrounds. They even had a collection of authentic 1950s and 1960s newspapers that they would strategically place in photos with fake items to make them appear genuinely from that era. The raids found lots of evidence: computers with templates for fake documents, materials for creating fake provenance papers, and most damning of all, a detailed handbook called the Celebrity Artifact Creation Guide, that gave step-by-step instructions for making fake celebrity memorabilia and creating false history. It was basically a how-to manual for memorabilia fraud, said Agent Teller. It covered everything from finding period-appropriate materials to creating fake paper trails to psychological tricks for building credibility with collectors and auction houses. The investigation also revealed the full extent of their previous scams. Besides the Elvis jet, the ring had reportedly been responsible for at least 14 other major memorabilia frauds over the last decade, including items supposedly owned by Marilyn Monroe, James Dean, and John Lennon. The total money involved was estimated at over $12 million. As news of the arrests spread, museums and private collectors around the country began the painful process of rechecking their collections, unsure which pieces might also be elaborate fakes. One particularly heartbreaking discovery was that a guitar allegedly used by Elvis in his famous '68 comeback special, which had been donated to a children's music charity auction and sold for $320,000, was among the fakes created by this ring. The charity had to refund the money, creating financial hardship for their music education programs. The court cases that followed were complicated and long. Reeves and his partners faced multiple federal charges, including wire fraud, mail fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. In a surprise move, Thomas Wright, the former Graceland employee, agreed to help prosecutors in exchange for a lighter sentence. His testimony provided crucial insights into how the operation had used insight to create convincing fakes that could fool expert examination. They understood that authentication is often about confirming what experts already believe, Wright testified. If you give experts something that perfectly matches what they expect to see, they're less likely to question it. In February 2024, after a 6-week trial, Jonathan Reeves was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. His partners received sentences between 5 and 12 years. The court also ordered them to pay back $14.3 million to their victims, though financial investigators believed much of the money had been hidden in ways that would make getting it all back unlikely. The Elvis jet itself, once valued at $4.2 million, now sits in an FBI warehouse as evidence. A $425 with a $600,000 renovation that almost became the perfect crime. One of the most shocking revelations from the trial was that several authentication experts had been bribed to verify the jet's provenance. Two well-known memorabilia authenticators received payments of $70,000 each through offshore accounts in exchange for their stamps of approval, further highlighting the corruption that can exist even among supposed experts. The Elvis jet fraud case has completely changed the memorabilia industry. Major auction houses have put in place new, more rigorous authentication methods. Technologies like isotope testing, which can determine the age and origin of materials, have become standard practice for high-value items. The Elvis Presley estate has established a new authentication board with unprecedented transparency in its verification processes. But perhaps the most important outcome has been a new awareness among collectors about the need to be skeptical and do their homework. For the FBI's art crime team, the case represents both a big success and a sobering reminder of how sophisticated modern scammers can be. What made this scheme so effective was that it targeted our emotions and our cultural connections, reflected Agent Teller after the trial. People wanted to believe they were touching a piece of Elvis's life, something that connected them to a legend. That desire created a vulnerability that these criminals expertly exploited. So there you have it, folks. The Elvis jet scam wasn't just about a fake airplane. It was about taking advantage of people who loved Elvis and wanted to be connected to his legacy. The FBI didn't just get back millions of dollars. They protected something more important, the true history of one of America's most beloved stars. In today's world where technology makes it easier than ever to create convincing fakes, this case reminds us that the truth still matters, and that those who profit from lies will eventually get caught. The real shame isn't just the money lost, but the broken trust and taking advantage of genuine fans. For those of us who care about real history, the message is simple: question everything, check facts yourself, and remember that if something seems too good to be true, it probably is. Elvis's legacy deserves nothing but the truth, and thanks to the hard work of the FBI, that legacy is now a little safer. Keep watching Golden Top Rewind, and until next time, keep your eyes open, and make sure your collectibles are the real deal. Thanks for watching.